Hey guys, this has taken me a little longer to get up than I had hoped. I was planning on doing this, on the weekend, Saturday or Sunday, but just been busy. And plus, doing it this way gives a few more people a chance to see Captain America: Civil War, which is going to be the focus of this video. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a review. Okay, a lot of a review. But I'm going to start off with just a general review everybody can watch without spoilers. And after that, I will clearly mark where we will be moving on to spoilery things, and there we'll discuss everything, all the awesomeness and surprises and whatnot. So we're going to get to that in just a minute. But before I do, I just wanted to give another shout out to my friend, coworker, fellow nerd, Nikki White, who, on top of being a huge nerd and a cosplayer, she also, it turns out, is quite the crafty lass. And she made a couple of these awesome nerdy wreaths for me and my wife, Jamie. She made us this one, this Harley Quinn Joker themed one. As that has been kind of our thing ever since this past Halloween, the Harley and Joker theme. We've kind of kept going with some stuff, so she made us that. I love it. It's awesome. And also, knowing that I am a huge Harry Potter fan, she hooked me up with this one, which is the Gryffindor colors, platform 9 3/4, and a little golden snitch hanging in the middle. So thank you, Nikki. They are awesome, and you do awesome work. So, let's move on with the review. Okay, so the reason I've called you all here today. Last Friday, Captain America: Civil War opened, starring Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, and pretty much everybody else to ever be a major character in a Marvel Cinematic Universe film, besides Thor and Hulk. In this just massively huge blockbuster of an action film, and where the story kicks off, basically the UN, the world leaders, are kind of fed up with the Avengers just doing whatever they want, and decide that they are going to start holding them accountable for their actions, and apparently the actions of the people trying to take over the world, trying to kill everybody that they actually stop and they save the world from. Somehow, apparently now that's their fault. But anyway, so that's where the story begins, and basically it drives a wedge between Tony Stark and Steve Rogers, in that they want the Avengers to basically become a UN police force, to go where the UN sends them and stay out of the places the UN doesn't want them. And Tony jumps on board with this because he's feeling guilty over the things that he's done and the things that he's been a part of, which he has more reason than any of the other Avengers to feel guilty. So I kind of get that. But so he basically goes, okay, yeah, we should do this, we should sign up. And then Steve is on the other side looking at, well, the U.S. government has proved in the past to us that we can't always trust the people in power. We can't always trust the governments. Yeah, like he says in the movie, what if they want us to go somewhere we know we shouldn't go, or there's somewhere we need to go and they won't let us? And so, and the way he puts it is, the safest hands are still our own. And I totally agree with his point. So that's where the division starts. Tony insists that they all fall in line. Cap refuses, And then there's this side plot, which is actually more the main plot of the movie, where Cap finally catches up with Bucky and figures out, he is himself again, and the things that he did as the Winter Soldier obviously was Hydra's brainwashing, and it wasn't really him, which Cap kind of already knew. But so he is trying to save Bucky when he gets framed for doing something he didn't do. But it's easy for the UN and those people to believe it was him because he did all these things when he was brainwashed and he was the Winter Soldier. And so Tony and his group get sent after Bucky to try to bring him in, and Cap's trying to help him stay out of custody because he's his friend. He knows that what happened wasn't his fault, and he's trying to prove that he's innocent of this new crime. And so there's those two big conflicts there. There's the division over the Sokovian Accords, the registration, and there's Cap trying to protect Bucky because he knows he's innocent, and Tony trying to do what the UN is telling him to do. And then, of course, there's the introduction of some new characters that have never been in Avengers films before. Ant-Man had his own film, but this is the first time he's ever been in one of the Avengers films. So there's him, and it's no secret by now, you guys all know from the commercials, they introduced the new Spider-Man, the rebooted Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man played by Tom Holland. And of course Black Panther, who comes into the mix, who has his own motivations for wanting to bring in Bucky. And so there's a whole bunch of new characters on top of that. There's the villain, a character named Zemo. And then you got Thaddeus Ross from The Incredible Hulk, played by John Hurt, is back for the first time since The Incredible Hulk, so that's kind of cool. And then, you've got characters that were introduced in Age of Ultron, like the Vision and Scarlet Witch are on the team now. So there's a whole lot of new characters going on. So, even though going in, I was kind of sad that Hulk and Thor were not in it. With all these other characters, you kind of don't even notice while you're watching the movie. They mention it a couple of times. Like somebody even says, Ross says to Cap, he says, "Do you even know where Thor and the Hulk are, or where Thor and Dr. Banner are?" So it gets mentioned, but in all the craziness and all the gigantic fight scenes and stuff, you kind of forget that they're not there. And so in this portion where I don't really want to give much of anything away, my general overview is I loved it. A lot of the critics, or at least one critic that I saw in the commercials, has already called it the greatest superhero movie of all time. I'm not sure if I agree with that. I think I'd probably have to see it a second time to solidify my opinion on that, but it's definitely one of the best, in my opinion. It's easily one of the best Marvel Cinematic Universe films. I'm sorry, guys, all the people who loved Batman vs. Superman, which I did as well, but this is such a superior film to Batman vs. Superman, in my opinion. And, a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's all this history. We've had, 12 films before this one to lay groundwork, and there's all that history. Whereas Batman vs. Superman just had Man of Steel. So the deck was kind of stacked. Sorry, guys, but yeah, I liked it as I knew I would. I enjoyed it quite a bit more than Batman vs. Superman, just because it hits all these notes of things that have been set up that that Batman vs. Superman just didn't have that. So beyond this point, I'm going to be using major spoilers. So if you just came here for an overall review, that's it right there. I love the movie. Go out and see it. If you haven't seen it, if you have seen it and you liked it, go out and see it again. Spend the money. It's totally worth it. I plan to at some point in the near future. I need to see that movie again because the first time you see a movie, you're just taking it in. You miss stuff. You don't catch every little awesome thing. So I want to go back and see it again as soon as I can. But so that's my basic review. I loved the movie. It is top notch. Definitely one of Marvel's best. Definitely one of superhero cinema's best. So go see it if you have not seen it. And that ends our spoiler-free portion. Now, for all you guys who have seen the movie, let's talk about all the awesome stuff we couldn't talk about with those other guys. Starters, I gotta talk about Spider-Man. I really like Tom Holland in the part. I think he's gonna be great. I couldn't really tell for a lot of the movie how much of it was actually him and how much of Spider-Man was just CG'd completely, because honestly he kind of looked CG a lot of the times, but then in shots where you could tell that it was real, like his suit looked exactly the same. So I don't know if it's just the material or what, but it seemed like a lot of what we were looking at could have just been pure CG. I don't know, but nevertheless, I think he's doing a fantastic job with the part. I love what they did with him in this story. I liked how they introduced him by taking us kind of out of the main part of the film into his world to pull him into the film. I really like that. I like that they didn't waste a whole bunch of time with origin stuff. I'm so glad of that. We don't need it. We all know it. So just having Tony go find him and go, "Hey kid, I like you. Let's go, do this thing." I think that worked out a lot better than trying to cram his whole story just to make him part of the film. I think they handled it really well. And honestly, I've heard divided opinions on the way his character was handled. The biggest being from Jamie, my wife, while we were watching it. She kept turning to me and being like, "I don't like the Spider-Man. They make him look like an idiot. Like they make him look like a complete freaking moron." And I kind of get what she was saying, but I kept trying to explain to her, this is like starting out Spider-Man. This kid's been Spider-Man for like 6 months. He's doing okay, but he doesn't really know what he's doing yet. And now he's being thrown into this big battle with these superheroes that he's seen for years and that he kind of idolizes, and he's nervous. He's this nervous little kid trying to fight superheroes, and so he just his mouth's running, which I mean that's kind of a Spider-Man thing anyway. He's always talking, he's always quipping. But in this, it was more of a nervous, I don't know what I'm doing type of thing, and that's as it should be. And she's like, "No, that's not Spider-Man." And I had to explain to her, well, you've only seen, the Spider-Man from the movies, Tobey Maguire, and then the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man. You've never really read the comics at the beginning when he was just this teenage kid, just still kind of figuring things out. I mean, they did that in both those movies. I mean, it was an origin story in both of the previous series, but at the same time, they gave the character a confidence that really he shouldn't have had, honestly. Whereas this is just a nervous kid trying to live in the world of superheroes. He hasn't really figured it out yet, so it kind of works and makes sense, I think. But she wasn't really there. She was thinking, Spider-Man should be, super, dialed in for these fights and stuff and ready to go. And that just wasn't the case with what they did with the story. And I really like the design of his costume, the way they made it look like the old style from the 70s and 80s comics, with the small spider and the roundish spider on the back, and the eye holes where the lenses, the way they were shaped, were kind of like the old Ditko drawings. And I wasn't sure at first when I saw the trailers, as I mentioned in a previous video, about his eyes moving, kind of like Deadpool's do in the Deadpool movie, but they kind of explain that, and the fact that this, like I said, the suit was designed by Tony, so there's a purpose for that. It's like lenses, adjusting, and so it made sense. And then we got to talk about Black Panther. I loved what they did with the character in this movie. They so quickly and succinctly brought him in, made him make sense in the story, gave him motivation without like spending an hour on who he was before getting the plot really rolling. They just did it really easily and succinctly in just a couple of minutes, and it worked. Which, I mean, a lot of times with a lot of movies that would have felt really, really rushed, but the way they handled it in this movie really worked. And his design and the actor, I can't think of his first name right now, Boseman, the actor playing him, he did an excellent job. And I love how just within the confines of his little arc in this one movie, they gave him character development. And he went from, his motivation in this movie was vengeance, to realizing by the end of the film that vengeance wasn't going to get him anything, and that he had to find a better reason for what he was doing. And there was a whole lot of other development. I mean, stuff going on between Vision and Scarlet Witch. I mean, hinting at the romantic relationship that they develop in the comic books. There's a lot of that there, and it's very heavy with very little being said or done. You can just they put it in there in such a way that you can just feel that that's what's going on, and it really means a lot, and really gets kind of awkward when they wind up on opposite sides of the main conflict. And that's one of the great things about this movie, is everybody gets their moments, everybody gets their development and their arcs. The only person who really doesn't get any development is Hawkeye, but I mean, he still has a great part. I mean, he's there as kind of protector to Scarlet Witch, which they kind of formed that relationship in Age of Ultron, to where, he's the guy that's got her back, because he owes this debt to her brother, and B, because he made that connection with her when they were in Sokovia. He kind of became her other big brother figure, the guy that, took her under his wing and ushered her into the Avengers. And I mean, you've even got character development for Falcon, and a little bit for Ant-Man. Not a whole lot. He was just kind of there to do some big stuff. I mean, the Giant Man thing was very cool, I thought. That they didn't spend a whole lot of time setting it up or explaining it. They just kind of did it, but it worked, and it was really cool. Especially the bits with Spider-Man and Ant-Man fighting each other. I thought that was really cool. That you had the two insect guys going at it. I thought that was kind of funny. And Spider-Man's line about, do you guys ever see that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back? I thought that was fantastic. I love that line. And then the way they worked it in with him taking down Ant-Man, I thought that was really cool. Paul Rudd got to show off his awesomeness. He had some really great moments and lines just in that one little fight. The bit about Tony's conscience, I thought, was one of the best lines in the movie. And then the bit with Rhodey. I think a lot of people probably thought that he was going to die in this movie, because they kind of made it look that way in the commercials. But I was talking about it with Jordan before we went, and I was like, I really don't think they're going to kill him, because they show it in the trailers. They make a big deal about him getting shot down. If they're gonna kill a major character like that, I don't think that they're going to show it in the trailer. So, but they didn't just, have him crash and get up and he was okay. There's there is a price to be paid there. There is something that has a lasting effect from that conflict. And I mean that helped, really solidify Tony's motivation in the fight. I mean, he already was there, but to keep him pushing forward beyond the end of that battle, and stuff moving forward for Rhodey in the future. I'm sure it's going to continue to be part of his arc that he is now paralyzed. He's having to rehabilitate himself. And Tony's going to have to help him with that. I'm sure that's going to be a big thing moving forward. And honestly, that was one of the things that really surprised me about this film. The fact that, aside from the civilians that die in the battle at the very beginning with Crossbones, that kind of kickstarts the whole thing, gets the ball rolling, nobody dies in this movie. Like, I figured going in, like, I was ready for tearing up, ready for full-on wet works. I figured at least 2 or 3 major characters were going to wind up dead. And no one dies. None of the major characters die. I thought there was a chance Rhodey might die, but I didn't really think he would. But yeah, I mean, not even the villain dies in this movie, which, again, I really appreciate, because I think it's a big mistake that they make far too often with superhero movies, to have these disposable villains that come in, they've got their one movie, and you kill them off. They do it over and over and over again. And I'm glad that they finally have started getting away from that pattern. I'm glad that Zemo's still around. He could do some damage down the road in some other movie, another Captain America movie, another Iron Man movie maybe, or he might even be involved in Infinity War. Who knows? But I was really kind of blown away that there were no major deaths in this film, and it's kind of something I'm on the fence about. I think it's a good thing, but at the same time, I've heard a lot of people making the argument that because of that, there was no real stakes in this movie. There was no real danger. There was nothing to really worry about. It was all going to be fine in the end. But the way it ends, I mean, even though nobody died, that's still not the case. I mean, the Avengers are torn apart, split down the middle, going in separate directions. And yeah, I know that because, I mean, that's the way things work. They're going to work that out. But to have that carry over moving forward, I think is an awesome thing. That they didn't just, at the end of the movie all reconcile their differences and all be buddies again. And, I think that would have been stupid and hokey and completely unbelievable. The fact that the big battle at the end leaves Tony laying on the ground, broken and begging and desperate and just almost like a tantrumy child yelling after Cap, and Cap just throwing down the shield and walking off with Bucky and leaving it like that, I think was great. I almost think it was too much to have him write that letter to Tony at the end, because I mean that kind of gives you the hope that they can work things out, which it's fine, but I think it was almost too much. I think they should have left them where they were character-wise when they parted ways at the end of that fight, and just showed Tony finding out that he had broken the rest of the team out of the raft and just left it there. But I mean, I kind of understand why they did it. You gotta give the bigger part of the audience, a little glimpse of where you're going moving forward. And I mean, is this a perfect movie? I know movie is. I have yet to see a perfect movie. But I have no major complaints with this movie. I have no small complaints with this movie. I'm sure there were things that were wrong with it. I just, having only seen it once and being completely blown away by it, I can't really see them. They're out of my line of sight for right now. I'm sure the second or third time I see it, I might see a couple little things that I go, really, but I'm not there yet. and one of the other things I want to talk about is that final battle. I kind of felt at the moment of watching it that having moved past the big battle with everybody and have Tony and Cap working together, to try to find and stop Zemo, it felt kind of tacked on to have him find out about Bucky being the one who killed his parents and restarting the fight. But at the same time, I'm glad they did it. I don't know that having them team up in between in the first place was necessary. I think maybe that is the part that wasn't necessary. I mean, they could have just had Tony follow him and just continue the fight and find out and just have that spur him on even further and harder. But I mean, I don't really have a problem with it. It's fine. it works out. And that last fight was just amazing to me. Just watching the three of them, and then once Bucky gets taken out, Cap and Tony just going at each other, no punches pulled, just all out brawling, I thought was awesome. And to see Cap come out on top, I think it always had to be that way. To me, in this story, in this situation, he had right on his side. So I think that was a powerful motivator, and that's, I mean, even more of a powerful motivator than the vengeance that was driving Tony. So having him come out on top was the right way to do it, and to have him pull that last punch to show him, I'm going to end this fight. You are going to lose, but I don't have to kill you. I can end this and put you down without having to end it the way you want it to end. And so, instead of smashing his face in with the shield, he just takes out the power source for the suit and leaves him helpless. So, yeah, I loved that fight. I love the way it wrapped things up for their arc together in the movie. And I loved what was going on outside with T'Challa and Zemo. How, he had him right there. He could have let him kill himself. He could have killed him himself. But he, like I said, he had at that point realized that letting the vengeance consume him was not going to solve anything. It was only going to make things worse for him. Things were already bad enough for him. And so he chose to just move on and, try to make a better situation. But at the same time, not letting Zemo take the easy way out, and so that he still has to answer for his crimes. Sorry, I was getting really dry there. It was getting hard to talk. So anyway, I think I pretty much covered everything I wanted to talk about. I'm excited with what they're doing moving forward, bringing Spider-Man in. I'm really interested to see what they do with the Spider-Man movies. That's one of those things that I'm going to reserve judgment on how awesome it's going to be until I see at least a first trailer, but I imagine it's going to be pretty awesome. Also, the other thing that I really wanted to make sure I talked about when I was coming up with everything I wanted to say earlier is another thing in that final battle that I was really impressed with was we got to see kind of a new side of of Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr.'s acting. I mean, kind of throughout the whole film, but definitely in that final scene where he's not joking around anymore. There's no more quips. There's no more being fun Tony. He is just pure rage and just pissed to the point of not caring about anything except beating down and killing the guy that killed his parents. And it was definitely a new side of Tony and Downey Jr.'s performance, and I love that they took it in that direction. So we got to see something new and something big with that character. I thought that was awesome. Wrapping it up, I just want to say that I am glad that that I wasn't entirely right. What I said in my previous video about Tony's motivations. I mean, I still think that he was. I mean, obviously they make very clear in the film that his biggest motivation was guilt, but I do think that it came from a better place than I assumed. It wasn't so selfish. It wasn't so I feel bad, so I'm going to, drag everyone else down with me. He was actually trying to do what he thought was right to make things better. Turned out he was wrong. I still think he was wrong about what was right, but it wasn't so selfish and dickish as I assumed it was going to be. So I'm glad that they've definitely, like I said, changed his character a lot from the Tony that he was in the Civil War comics and his motivations there. But yeah, like I said, I'm really excited to see what they do moving forward. I love this movie, and I want to know what you think. Leave me some comments down below to give me your opinions. Be long-winded. I don't care. Write me an essay if you want to. I want to know what you thought, especially if you have a differing opinion than me on anything, on whether the movie was good or not, whether you liked Spider-Man or not, if you thought he was lame, if you think, again, if you think Tony was right and Cap was wrong, any of it. I want to hear your opinions, so leave it in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, share it if you think somebody else would like it, subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I gotta go. I will see you guys in a couple weeks for another Loot Crate unboxing, and then just after that, I will have some footage up from MegaCon in Orlando at the end of the month, so stay tuned, and I will see you guys later.